What is it about miserable old ghosts that they find it impossible to stop spooking us? Yesterday we had Paul Keating, the newest member of Malcolm Turnbull's miserable club, diving into the Morrison government over AUKUS and the nuclear sub-deal. He thought Scott Morrison was leading Australia away from the Asian century and back towards a jaded and faded Anglosphere. Has he not detected a slight change in China's attitude? A massive dose of aggressiveness? They become unforgiving when breaching world trade agreements, most of them with Australia. And Keating even ripped into the current ALP leadership, who were, he said, complicit in an historic backslide. Labor's bipartisan support over these subs actually was constructive and sensible, and a little bit out of the blue considering their background on nuclear-powered anything. But today, another miserable old ghost scored media space on the club's favourite station, ABC Radio National. Kevin 07 was given, well, he was giving the government 0 marks for diplomacy.
The normal way you would treat an ally, if there was a bona fide reason for changing the project design from conventional submarines to nuclear-powered submarines, the basic requirement is to bring in the French ambassador, speak to the French president, speak to the French contractors naval, and if you're going to go to nuclear-powered vessels, then to re-tender the process and invite the French, the British and the Americans to participate. That's the way in which a professional government would handle this, not the rolling amateur hour stuff we've seen from Morrison.
Yes, speak properly to those on the international stage, which is a bit rich, coming from the bloke who at the Copenhagen Climate Summit in 2009, as Prime Minister, infamously said those Chinese effers are trying to rat F us. What a wonderful lesson in appropriate international diplomatic relations that was. He's got an amazing hide, Kevin Rudd, hasn't he? We still haven't heard a peep, of course, from the president of the miserable old ghost club, Malcolm Turnbull. Maybe his obsolete diesel submarine deal looks more woeful by the day. But while the French continue to snap and snarl at anything vaguely Australian, US President Joe Biden thought it was time to calm the waters. In a telephone hookup, he apologised to French President Emmanuel Macron over the new nuclear submarine deal. He apologised for keeping France in the dark.
The president, during this call, as we said in the readout, acknowledged that there could be there could have been more discussion in advance of the announcement, and that was an important message for him to convey.
And Joe must have had some really well-written cue cards during that call, because as a result, France's ambassador to the US was ordered to return to his post. He'll do that next week. He'd only just arrived back in Paris. That's hardly even time to unpack your bag. But Paris has not announced similar plans for the man stationed in Canberra. He remains in Paris. Australia is still clearly in the doghouse because despite his attempts to kiss and make up, Scott Morrison was not granted one of those palsy phone calls, a fact the PM didn't seem too upset over.
The United States and France are NATO partners, and there are certain expectations amongst NATO partners about how they engage with each other on national security issues. Australia is not a member of NATO. I mean, the dialogue between the United States President and the French President was a function of their relationship. I look forward to engaging again with President Macron. I know that it will be some time before that occurs, but we will patiently pursue those opportunities because we want to work together.
Now, Kevin, that's diplomacy. But the most undiplomatic statement of the week came from British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He said France should get over its anger at a partnership between the UK, US and Australia. And he used his, well, university grasp of the language to basically tell Macron to harden up.
It's time for some of our dearest friends around the world to, prenez un grip about all this, and donnez-moi un break.
He's good value, Boris, isn't he? Get a grip. Give me a break. At least we know what side he's on. Although, to Scott Morrison, it was all French to him.
Well, I don't speak French. That wasn't one of my strong suits when I was at school or even university. But Boris has a way of expressing things that only Boris can.
Now, the Prime Minister will attend the Quad Summit at the White House tomorrow with President Biden and the leaders of India and Japan before returning to Australia over the weekend and heading into another 2 weeks of quarantine. The Chinese, though, will be watching that meeting of the Quad very closely.